to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Always thank you all for coming this evening. So, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Okay, motion, second?
Second.
Second by Gary. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, motion for resolution for closed meeting for negotiation strategy.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
second. Okay, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? This time we have one for public comment. None available. Do I have a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
A motion, a second.
Second.
Second by Mimi. Discussion?
I have one item of discussion
Okay.
on the seniority list.
That's fine.
Corinne, would it be possible, I don't know how that list is generated, but is it in like a spreadsheet? Because some of the so I was trying to figure out, I know that things are listed like by their,
It's an Excel sheet. Yes.
okay, but some of the teachers' names are first name, last name, some of them are last name, comma, first name. Is there some way to just kind of, me and my making things uniform so that it's a little bit easier on sorting if you're trying to look at it?
It doesn't sort well just because of all the merging that's been done.
Well, by names, you
Yeah.
would be able.
Except when you start sorting, because there
Well,
are
I'm
some.
not trying to sort it,
Oh,
but I would like to see the name. The first thing that stuck out to me was there are names, first name, last name, and then you go down and then they're alphabetical, last name, comma, first name. I just think it should be uniform.
okay.
That, it's. Maybe it's not this one, maybe it's the probationary
Just keep
teacher.
going
Maybe it's a
one.
probationer?
Well,
Is it the
it's-
probationer?
Just scroll down and just keep
It-
scrolling.
do you know what I'm talking about, Todd?
No, but I mean, I know what you're saying now, just keep going down.
I was gonna find get the probationary one up too and see if.
I swear there was one I was looking at that was set up differently, last name, first name, last name.
I know that they're on here based on their
When they
date
were
of hire,
hired.
so it's not alphabetical at all.
It's not alphabetical.
No, but she just said, yeah, I know what you're saying, and just because it's the consistency of the names.
Yeah, it's just, I guess whoever keeps it, maybe it's an easy thing they can do on the original, just to make it one way or the other.
I haven't seen any that are last name first though.
All right,
But
well,
yeah.
I'll take
The
screenshots.
last ones on the list of the probationary
Yeah,
are last names, then first.
are
Oh,
they?
they are, so
Yeah.
you're, I know, I thought I saw it somewhere, but maybe I didn't.
Because you got Gibbs, comma, Sarah.
Oh, okay,
But
Okay,
that starts after,
yeah, it's just consistent.
well, you get down to page, where page is.
okay. Page Uggerud?
Yeah,
Okay.
you got Underwood, then page.
Okay.
From there on down they are.
They have to be
Okay.
tenured before it gets switched though.
Oh,
That's
well,
good
as long as there's a reason, as long as
It
there's a
sounded good,
reason.
didn't it?
Yeah, sounded like you know
Yeah.
what you're doing there, Todd.
Yeah, first.
Okay, oh,
Okay.
so starting with,
Page on it,
okay,
because Robert's
Oh,
okay
yeah,
with
there
it.
is.
yep,
From there on down, they're opposite.
okay.
Sorry,
It's okay.
I'm just trying to
Any
let you
other?
know I look at the stuff.
No, we appreciate that, Mike Lane. Is there anything else?
No.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Discussion items. Continuous Matt, Todd? You have
I know kids well enough, well, I'm not gonna hand out things that too early, because otherwise they'll be looking at the other stuff and not gonna have that happen.
And make sure Ann gets extra copies for
Oh, yeah, I can do that, so.
me to.
Okay, then I'll explain a little bit about this. So the ALEX, the continuous math program that we have just for our 7th and 8th graders. What you have here on this sheet is for the top is for the 7th grade, the bottom is for the 8th grade. And so you can see their initial knowledge check. And what I did is those, if we're looking at the top ones, it says 0 to 9%, 3.4%, meaning 3.4% of the kids, and you can probably figure out how many kids, because at the bottom it says there's 29 kids, were at 0 to 9% of their knowledge on that 7th grade math, okay? And so all the way up to, like, there was, 3.4% between the 59%. And as we moved on, so at mid-quarter, you can see what the percents look like. At first quarter, and then at second quarter, mid-quarter, and you can see that nice little progression, which it is. I actually didn't think that it would go a nice line the way it is, because I thought that as it got deeper and deeper into the material, they'd slow down a little bit, but they're still making really good progress in the progress that they need to make. One thing about this, if you look at that, what do I have here? If you look, 48.3% of the 7th graders are now over 50% of the material done. And we said they need to get at least to 80%, and that's where they'll meet all the standards, meeting all the standards before they can take the final, and they can take it as many times as they want. And then with the 8th graders, 45% are already at that 50% complete. And we're hoping it's over 50%, by the end of the semester. One 8th grader right now went over that 80%, took the final, what we have, it's a comprehensive final, ended up with a high enough grade. Teacher called parent, do you want to move on to the next level, to the geometry? They were all for it, so we moved that student on to the geometry already. We have 2 7th graders that are there that are actually over the 90% right now, but they want to go a little higher, and then they'll be ready to move on. But one thing I'm having the teachers do is call the parents and say, okay, this is the deal, they're going to move on, and so congratulate them and all. And so that's been a neat thing. And so it's kind of neat to see these kids, we're not holding them back. They're ready to go on to the next level, and they're ready to go on to the next level.
Can I ask a question about
certainly.
the geometry? So that's a high school class, so they're now in the high school
Thank
geometry?
you. Yes, they are. And so that was a big reason I said we need to understand that if they're taking the high school geometry now, that is going to be for credit.
Do they still do it with their 8th grade class and they're doing it
They're-
through this online, or are they physically going with the 9th graders?
No, they're going to be with the Alex right now. Yep. So they're still in that same classroom. But they'll be into the next, level.
Can they keep doing that all the way up to?
So we, what the initial thought is, and maybe I'll just jump around a little bit, is that we said probably up until the Algebra 3 level, which we have, that pre-calc, where we think that they probably need to be more lockstep with the teacher because there's that many more questions and to get through, but we'll see. Interesting thing is, I was talking to an area school who did the same thing. I thought I was being really creative and just jumping in and doing that, but they are doing, and they actually jumped in full board, all of the classes right away. And they're going, oh, I wish we would have done like you guys and just slowly moved the kids along this way, but they're doing it all the way through. And so our teacher's been kind of talking a little bit back and forth. How do you do this? What are you doing? How do you use some of this data? What's it look like? They actually have a big enough lab where they have 2 of their grade levels in one classroom of the lab, but then they have 2 teachers, and so each teacher can go around and help. So they have 2 teachers in there, but they double the classroom size. So they're doing the same thing using the Alex as well. Yeah. Couple things, the positives, talking to the teachers, I said, give me some positive, what you're saying. They said, well, that individualized learning and pacing has just been great for the kids. If students get stressed, they say, yeah, once in a while a student gets stressed in a particular topic, okay, let's go on to this other one and let's come back to it and we'll help you the next day, which is a good thing. And it's not going to let you do something that you're not ready for either. So that's been, a really good thing. The staff is able to engage longer. They like the idea they can engage longer with some of those kids that are struggling. They can engage individually longer with them. And some kids are just like, okay, oh, remember you got to do this, and boom, and then off they go. They don't need a lot of that one-on-one instruction. The data, there's so much data it gives them, the teachers, on the kids and their progress, how many topics per hour they're learning, as a class, what are they ready for next? So, the teacher can say small group instruction and say, okay, I know that you 6 kids are ready for factoring. Let's get together. Let me show you a little bit more about that. So they have that data there, which they think is great. Another thing that's great is, and we haven't had this, but I know this is going to be ideal, is if a new student comes in, usually it's really tough. In the past, it's been so tough to get the kid back to where they're supposed to be. Maybe they're ahead, maybe they're behind. Now we just give them that test, they're where they're at, and it's going to be, that's a really nice thing. Haven't had that yet, but usually we do. Challenges, it's a new way to teach, so they're still learning, okay, how do I, get this, work with a small group, how do I, really individualize it with some kids. So they're figuring those things out. It's going well, but then it's like, okay, do I assign? And then they realize that some kids, they have to say, you're working with me 5 minutes every day, because there's just certain kids, and they had to figure that out, and they're doing a great job. The data, yeah, they say there's so much data where to start, but they're working with that. Special ed students has been a little bit of struggle at times. A lot of times try to find different ways. Okay, it's cut down the assignments, maybe it's too much. Well, with the ALEKS, that can't happen. I mean, they're only going to get so far, but some of the special ed students would just say, the landmarks, percent they need to get done, we'll just back that way off, because we want them to learn it. We just look at, okay, what's realistic, what is in their realm to be able to do. So we just hold it back, and that's been working well, but it's one of those, a little bit of a challenge with that, but we're figuring that piece out. The kids seem to really like it that I've talked to, and some don't. I'm always doing math, and they can't get by with not doing stuff, and we can really see. But one thing I've talked to the teachers about is, since they're on that screen time so much, get creative. Maybe, every second week do a little hands-on project with math, opposed to just, always doing the ALEKS, and I think that would be really good for the kids too, to engage them as well. So they're going to be working on some of those things as well. But it's going well for the 7th and 8th graders so far, and I know the one kid was just super excited. And in fact, he went to the geometry, took the initial knowledge check, and got a 53% in geometry. And traditionally, we sometimes hold those kids back, because he would have been lockstep with the rest of the class, which is kind of sad when he's really flying. And he's excited about it too. And this is a kid that, to be honest, I think might have had some discipline problems if we didn't keep challenging him.
So is this 7th and 8th grade, so what's your plan then?
So the plan will be then just being able to move it on. So then next year, those 8th graders, wherever they're at, we can just make, some of them may, if they didn't quite get through, maybe we'll have to keep them a little bit in algebra and then move them into the geometry. But most of them will be into that geometry then the next year. So we kind of slowly integrate the grade level with it.
Is there any talk about retention of the material over the summer break? Like, do you reassess?
They'll be reassessed, yeah.
And so even if they got all the way or most way through the 8th and then their assessment, they might go back a little bit?
And a lot of it is, even in the geometry, there's still a lot of the algebra that's in there in the 8th grade algebra. Now, one thing about the 7th grade, though, is we have to teach algebra to 8th graders, state law. So this year, all of it didn't matter how the kids did in 7th grade, all of the 8th graders had to be in algebra, and that's the way it is. And so they're all in there, but they did okay on that first assessment. Some are a little bit lower, but most of them are passing. We did have one kid, but again, it ended up being a special ed kid where did terrible on a knowledge check that's there, but because just had a bad attitude that day, well, it kicked them way back. Now you have to go through and do all that practice to get it built back up again. Teaches them a little bit of a lesson too. But so far it's been a really positive experience with that. But some of the stuff, there's still some growing pains of figuring out how to really help those kids that might be struggling on a certain topic and not letting them struggle for a long time. Other questions there? But yeah, so far so good. The other thing I want to throw at you, I'm not going to really talk much about it other than that Next year would be the time we would do the DC trip. We do that every other year with our juniors and seniors. So I'm just gonna give this to you, and you, at the next board meeting or something, you can act on it to approve it, because you'll wanna, anytime we have a big trip like this that we stay overnight, I think it's important that the board approves the trip. But it's really not anything different than we've done before.
Can I ask you a quick question on this again, Don?
Yeah, certainly.
So when earlier you mentioned other schools are doing more, are they doing different classes?
What they're done, so the other school, all of their math, all the way 7-12.
Okay, are you
Well, actually,
looking at
6-12
maybe,
is
because I know
all right.
originally you looked at maybe applying that next year?
So next year, so right now we just have the 7th and 8th graders.
Right.
So next year it'll be 7, 8, and 9.
Okay, so
Right.
that's how you're gonna keep. the
Correct,
rest,
and then
okay.
7, 8, 9, 10, but right now, I'm tentative about, you know, with the juniors and seniors, when they kind of get to that level, that math, you know, the calculus, the pre-calculus, so many of them are kind of in that same spot. It's a really tough thing. You can do it, but it might be a little trickier. So we're not there yet, but that's one of those,
So you can
you
monitor
might
and see
want to
where
do
it
it, you know, like the traditional way where you have a little bit of the lecture working with the kids, as opposed to just all, still use the Alex program, but we may have to be more lockstep with it.
And the nice thing about Alex, for those kids that possibly don't want our Algebra 3 pre-calc, Alex does have statistics. So that's how they can take their 6, because they need 6 credits in math to graduate. They could do statistics on Alex for their math requirement for graduation.
And it all aligns with Minnesota.
Minnesota standards, absolutely, yep. Question?
Well, also with the initial knowledge check there in September, I mean, those figures there, will that show also how, if they're doing better in elementary school, if they raise those numbers or they go down for us, or?
The elementary scores, looking at MCA scores, when they're coming out of elementary, they're doing really, really well. Except they're kind of siloed, because they leave elementary and they somehow leave that knowledge, and they think it's a totally different world over here. So we've had that, we've talked about it before, the 7th grade dip, and this is the first thing that we've really found that.
So we'll see, yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, you know, part of it's gonna be that MCA test too. We're gonna see, okay, are they prepared? But, you know, one thing that the teachers, and I'll be starting right in January, is working with the teachers on, okay, how we're gonna prepare these kids, because we wanna make sure that they're getting problems that are gonna be very similar to the MCA. Part of, you know, the state test is knowing how to take that test. It's not just always just the materials. How do you take a test, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds really positive. I appreciate the information. I would be interested to know at the end of the year how, you said that the teachers were working on, or you suggested doing some little hands-on or some more infusing some traditional stuff into this. So I'd like to hear how that's going, because the students that I have with online stuff, at some point, they get burned out on it, and you've got to mix it up a little bit. So
I'd agree,
glad to
yeah.
hear you saying that, and I'd like to hear how that has worked as well.
Yeah, you know, I keep thinking about that. Do we want to have a no technology day? You know, because I just think we're so inundated, and you know, it's okay. It's, you know, once in a while just power down, and you know, let's just get creative with our mind and stay off of it for a day. You know, we'll see. Someday maybe we can think about that. Any other questions? So with the other one, you know, I think that's something, just take a, you know, look at it on your own. I think most of you are aware of it, except for Mr. Lundak maybe, and you kind of know a little bit about that truck. And just read through it, and, you know, for the next board meeting, if there's any questions, concerns, just give me a call from now until the next board meeting.
Is
When
this
maybe you want
pretty
to go
much,
over it.
is there any different site on this?
No, not
trip?
really. That's about the same as it's kind of been.
This is the abbreviated tour, not the extra one.
It's not the extra 2 days or whatever, we
To
kind of pulled
Williamsburg,
that back a
okay.
little bit. Mr. Diekman is the one who will be in charge of the trip, you know, so he's gonna be the lead, and I haven't figured out the other chaperones yet.
Well, legacy tours, I mean, out of Decorah, that individual, in terms of history, he sets that up and does. He's been doing that for
For
ages.
such a long time, and you know, the guy that used to do it, you know, passed away for us, yeah, it's been first class. Every kid that's gone has just said the world of it. Someday I'd like to go. I was gonna go, I wanted to go a couple of years ago with my youngest, my baby, and that was said, and he goes, Dad, I wanna go on a big trip all by myself.
Oh, yep.
And then a week before, he goes, you can go if you want. No way, there, buddy.
When you go with your kids, then they like the fact that you can be there to pay.
Yep.
Well, I was on the band trip to New York City that time, yeah, that happened a lot.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Todd. Board committee charters? Fran?
Charters are there again. Michaeline came in and we tried to make them consistent in each of the different sections. There have been some changes. I didn't do the strike-through language. I apologize for that. But if you can get in and read through them and see, I tried to make the changes that were requested at the board meeting, and then other changes for the sake of consistency.
After I talked about the policy committee one, there's one additional change to make policy consistent with the others. I
Okay.
had on there that, I think we had on there that meetings could be called by, oh, there we got strike through language. So at the bottom of it, or under the, not under, under meeting schedule. Yeah, meetings would be scheduled when requested by the full board, the superintendent, or the committee chair. I think we should strike the committee chair, because as an advisory committee, it should be the full board
Okay.
asking a committee to study something.
Do we have consensus from the board on that one?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, usually that's, we talk about it and say we should have a meeting, or we, you know, prior to having them.
Well, I mean, I think most of the language in here, and Corinne, I think wisely just pulled the policy on committees as the procedures, and so that stands in every charter, which it should always be the board, you know, knowing that a committee is gonna meet and, or requesting that a committee meet.
I don't know, a few years ago though, and I haven't done it recently, but I would put together the schedule of the committees. Like online school, we want to meet this many, and I remember doing it as the chair. I don't know that that's an issue.
I think it's good practice, because then if the board says, yeah, we're gonna have a meeting, because normally we discuss it prior to, you know, like in this, we'll say, okay, at the end, we say our next meeting's coming up about this. And I think that gives the whole board some opportunities to maybe input. Instead of just having somebody call the meeting, it should be talked about at the board meeting, and then we're all aware it's gonna happen. And if you have something you wanna input, that's your time to input, or get with the chair and say, okay, maybe we talked about having an online school board committee meeting January 28th or whatever day that may be. And I wanted to, can you bring this up with them? Where if it's not brought up at the board, you wouldn't maybe have that opportunity.
Yeah, I don't think it has been a problem either, but I'm just saying if the committee chair wishes to have a meeting, they should bring it up to the full board and say there are some topics and I'd like to have a meeting, and then everyone knows it's gonna happen. Instead of scheduling a meeting without,
Yeah, without anybody having opportunities for input.
I mean, except for negotiations, that happens sort of on its own.
Well, and if something happens in the online school that's kind of major and we need to have a quick meeting, it would be a pain to have to wait for a board meeting. Who else can call it?
The
Superintendent.
superintendent.
So, I mean, if there's something major that happens and we have to meet to do damage
then-
control. I
Well,
wouldn't
then we
wanna
either
have
need to add committee chair to each one of them, because committee chair is only on the policy committee. It's not on any of the other charters.
Well, I mean, it might, I'm happy, I would be fine with just the superintendent and the full board, but, I mean, everybody has to agree, so, Gary, what are your thoughts?
I guess that'll work.
Which way?
Well, the committee or the full board, or the superintendent or the full board.
Ron?
Yeah, I mean, if it's an emergency kind of situation, I'm sure hoping the superintendent is gonna know it.
And be willing to call a meeting.
Right.
The committee chair, is that a board member?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
It's always
it's always a
member.
board member.
Yeah.
Okay, so that, yeah, that's, I mean, the full board should then, because you don't want to act individually as a board member.
That's why I'm suggesting.
So maybe you're fine with that if we, I mean,
I'm
if.
fine with it. I mean, I actually prefer the meetings be scheduled for the whole year.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then.
And
Well,
we
that's
all know when
ideal.
they're gonna meet, right? And
Right.
Yeah, but we haven't, I mean,
Ideally.
Ideally, but to say we're gonna meet, this committee's gonna meet 4 times a year. I mean, there should be you're calling meetings for the sake of meetings.
No, well, with finance, Gwen knows when we need to, you know, we meet this time and this time and this time, and she can probably tell us, you know, these are the 4 times you're gonna meet through whatever, 5 or
I
6.
think we discussed that, and it was built into the responsibilities of the committee, rather than saying there will be this many meetings. Cause I tried to put that in there, saying we'll meet in April for budget planning, in June for budget, or April for budget adjustment, and in June for budget planning or whatever. And that's built into the responsibilities, cause those have to happen at certain times. So, do we put it in the meeting? Because then we're committing to calling and posting a meeting. Or do we just leave it that the meetings are as needed to fulfill the responsibilities?
I would prefer to have the meetings, to fulfill the responsibilities. And then in our organizational meeting in January, we can have, those scheduled committee meetings where we know we'll need them for those responsibilities.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so we'll just strike that one part of it then. Then they're all the same. Any other comments on it? Concerns? Okay,
So they'll be on the next board agenda for approval.
okay. Old business, items for discussion and approval, levy certification.
At the Truth and Taxation meeting, we talked about the 2 scenarios on which the Finance Committee landed, so to speak, as far as our 2 options. One is to keep the tax at that flat rate of 0.59. The other is to reduce it to 0.566. And so I do have some language for the certification for the motion when you guys decide what you want to do. So, which one?
What was the committee recommendation?
The committee recommendation was option 2, which was a reduction to 0.566, but there's language that there's about 3 things working that have to be adjusted, so that has to be addressed in the motion.
I think when we brought it up, you know, at the meeting, I think everybody was here. That seemed to work out. Gwen, again, I'll bring it up, I did last time, as long as we have that understanding. If we have to change it next year, it may be a bump up that we have to be ready for it. And, you know, being able to address that to the community, you know, so they understand that we're trying to be frugal, but sometimes things change that are out of our control, so. Is everybody fine with the 0.56? Michael?
I am.
Gary?
I'll make a motion that we go up to
Oh, okay, if you're going to make the motion,
You have that language.
and Ron, you're okay with it too?
Yes.
Okay. If we're going to levy to the max, with the exception of levying Q-Comp at 0, levying the long-term facility maintenance at $19,926, and levying the local optional revenue at 43% for an overall rate of 0.566.
Is that your
Making
motion?
that
That's my
one.
motion.
I heard you speak those very
It's
words.
amazing how you can throw your voice. Perfect.
I'll second that.
Okay. So further discussion on it?
Then if we have to, in a year, go up, I mean, we
Right.
can always say, well, we were up there and we dropped down, gave you a break.
Right, exactly. And the main reason is just
so,
because we don't know what's
and
going on.
everybody will remember that.
Yes.
Yeah,
You
Well, I
always
mean,
remember
we
when it
also
goes
have
up,
to-
never down.
Watch what happens with other funding and what happens with state
Enrollment.
funding, and
Right.
right now, nobody knows what's going to happen next
Well, the
year.
concern I have, and that's why I keep bringing it up, is because right now, the way the state is looking, they're not very well off.
Yes,
So the concern is always that they seem to take away from education.
yes.
That's, history says that, so that is always my concern, so. Anyway, is that enough?
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So January 2018 organizational meeting,
And we need to have this in our minutes as far as when we're setting it. If we're going to retain the meetings on Thursdays, it would be January 4th. And do you want them to stay starting at 6 p.m.?
seems to be working out. Has anybody had any concerns? Michaeline, you good with that?
I am.
Gary?
Yep.
Ron? Okay, perfect. Todd, you?
I'm
Whatever.
at your beckoning call.
Make a note of that.
Not a chance.
It's taped.
Oh, we have a motion for the,
I'll
So
make a,
moved.
I'll second it.
okay,
Okay, so
discussion?
who made the motion?
Gary.
Gary?
Gary? Michaeline second, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Policies for second reading, I'm assuming we're approving these tonight, right, Michaeline?
I believe so, we discussed them last time.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve policy 201, 202, 203, 203.1, 203.2, 203.5, 203.6, and 213?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a motion, got a second? Discussion on the policies.
Only to put the agenda approval in the consent items.
I looked at that and MSBA suggests to not, it says it can, but the model that they're giving has it pulled out. And so typically we follow MSBA guidance, and the MSBA guidance is to have it.
Why is it in the, okay, cause it
Yep.
just says these things can be.
They can be, but
They recommend not.
MSBA suggests that it's not pulled out.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just finishing the conversation, thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. New business, and for discussion and approval, MSBA resolution regarding special education state funding gap.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion,
I seconded.
okay, we have a second, discussion?
I think as Corinne said last week, this is just going on the record that we would favor the support at the state and in the next motion, the federal level. It may or may not, it doesn't commit us to anything, it's just becoming a growing voice, right? Or a voice that, and you are okay with it?
Yep.
Support it?
Oh, definitely. I wish it would have more impact, but right now, if we can get every school to do this slight little drop of water, maybe many drops of water can fill the bucket.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next, MSBA resolution regarding special education federal funding.
Same thing, just at the federal level.
So we have a motion,
Make a motion.
Second.
second by Gary. Discussion?
This one's actually more important because it is the federal law that is dictating what we are doing, and as far as our expenditures. And it's the federal government that has been woefully far behind in actually funding their mandates.
For how many years now?
Uh,
Anyway.
1975.
So a couple years. So we have motion, we had discussion, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Announcements, important events, MSBA Leadership Conference scheduled for January 11-12. Gene, you're gonna go up for the phase one,
Phase
correct?
1
And two,
two.
correct?
And I've registered people, has anybody gotten confirmation from MSBA?
I haven't received anything.
I haven't got any.
No, I
You
got
said that
I
too.
got the hotel confirmation, but I didn't get anything for the actual conference itself. But it's free, so,
Yeah, well, Jean's would,
Mine,
yeah, yours is.
phase 1.
Did you get
phase
him
2.
set up with the hotel then, Ann? Or-
mhm.
Anything else on that? The breakfast
Um,
on the 10th?
I'm interested in going to that, Anne, if you wanna put me down
for the
for the
breakfast.
breakfast.
And, this kind of slides right into part B here. At the collaborative meeting, that we were discussing, and then the superintendents are thinking of presenting, the 4 superintendents are thinking of presenting to the legislators in attendance the fact that we have some significant mental health needs. All the schools are dealing with more students from childhood trauma and the impact that's having on our educational systems. And the fact that we don't have the funding, we don't have the funds to have a social worker here on site.
Have you found out if any of our local people will be there this year? Just curious.
It's unknown, but the superintendents agreed to request and make a presentation to the legislators who are in attendance, a unified stand. It was a really, I was at the collaborative meeting, and this is a tough thing for superintendents and counselors and principals in the districts to deal with, because it sounds extremely difficult to meet the needs of the children at risk, and it also takes away from the children from their education, from the rest of the class, because they are not getting everything they need as well.
And we have, a report just came out on KGTC that of those, children in the foster care system, 27.1% are there because of the, alcohol or drug use of their parents. And in 2016, 1,330 children were born with having some drug or alcohol in the womb. So we see those same types of impacts here in the county, and that's what we're addressing with the collaborative.
And the other thing that was made clear was the funding, the Houston County Collaborative funding is dwindling year after year. It is, how many years ago, I mean, the financial officer was there, and not that many years ago, when Steve Shoy used to be the representative, there was, for Houston County Collaborative, like $500,000. We're down to like 75,000 is anticipated
A year,
to be
it's
shared.
dropping about 20,000 a year.
Yeah, to be shared by 4 school districts and the county health services, and that are trying to supply a need. A need is growing, and the funding and the support.
Where did the funding come from? The state?
It's the state.
Originating when you're talking,
It's
is that, I
the
mean, that's
state, and it's
basically what it is.
it's
The
generated
state
by
is-
random moments.
Yeah, don't ask.
Okay.
Wow.
It took me 2 minutes to figure out, and nobody does really know what random,
Well,
2
I
meetings to
might,
figure those out.
I'll go to the meeting on the 10th. It'd be good. If
Me
you guys
too.
are putting that much effort into it, I think the more support we can show as a board would be good.
And I know legislatively, they don't, it's a shorter session, and they don't have the money, but they have to start looking at the mental health needs of the students and their parents.
I should be able to make it too.
as one of the superintendents pointed out and the others agreed, there are a couple of legislators, not ours, but there are a couple of legislators who have made it known that this is something that they have, it's been a blip on their radar, and so it felt there was an important need to support that, even though they're not maybe our guys, that if there's somebody willing to take that to the state, that's a drop, it's another drop, right?
Yep.
So that was good to hear. And I think we're through that.
Okay. Anything else on that? Okay, meetings and committee updates. I don't believe we have had any, correct, Corinne? I don't go to all of them, obviously, but.
No. Not. We are going to have QComp the first Wednesday back, so January 3rd, and I'll get the invite out.
And we're supposed to have a meeting tomorrow for negotiations.
Yes, tomorrow at 3:30, we'll be negotiating. Not that many people want to do negotiations on the Friday right before Christmas, but
We do.
we are.
'Cause that's just the way we are.
You bet.
Okay, so if you guys have anything you want to add to that, let us know. Anything else, Corinne? So we have board superintendent feedback, thank yous, future agenda items.
Other than MDE requested a copy, and it's public knowledge, requested a copy of the contract that we have with K-12 for MNBA, because there's another online school opening, and it is going to be configured somewhat like those schools that are configured through K-12.
So is it more competition in
A
that
new
arena?
vendor coming?
Pearson
Oh, boy.
Pearson is starting another Connections. Right now they're looking, and their negotiations to start it at Wabasha Kellogg. So I just want you guys to keep that.
How
on
does
your
the
radar.
state have to approve that
The
before they
state
come
will
in?
have to approve it, which is why they did
Want to
the data
review our-
request for our contract, because they wanna see what's in, they wanna compare to see if the contract that Connections is, and Pearson is providing to Wabasha Kellogg is basically fair and something that should be approved.
Are they gonna be concerned with I know with our contract, we have very small teacher to student ratio compared to most. Is that one of the things they may look at, or you
They
don't know?
wanted the entire contract, and they wanted the addendums, so, and since it's all been board approved, it is public
No,
knowledge. But
I'm fine,
because you are the board, because you did approve it, because there was a data request, I wanted to let you know. And
So how has that been requested before? Because other online schools have been approved in the state of
Minnesota without that ever being requested.
Yeah, so.
There is someone, Jeff Playman, started last year as the director of online education. And there are other people at the table now from MDE, as they are kind of redrawing their maps of who's in charge of what. And so we're getting some requests we haven't had before, because there's new sets of eyes on everything.
Okay.
Well, thanks for letting us know, Corinne. Does anybody have any other comments or concerns? Okay, so at this time, I have a motion to go into closed session for negotiation strategy. Second. Discussion, we'll close and then come back in and adjourn. All in favor? We'll adjourn from there.
We'll adjourn from
From
there.
the off, right.
Okay.
All opposed?
I'm not opposed.
Aye.